Close your eyes. Take a breath, not the kind of breath that simply keeps the body alive, but the kind that awakens your soul. The kind of breath that has traveled through centuries of wisdom, carried on the wind of the mountains where monks have walked in silence, carried in the rhythm of the drums that echo from temples older than any empire. Breathe in, not just air but stillness, presence, clarity. Breathe out, fear, noise, distraction. Before you make any decision in life, pause. Pause not out of fear, not out of hesitation, but out of reverence. Reverence for this life, reverence for this moment, reverence for the countless lives touched by every choice you make. In this pause you are not weak, you are powerful. For in that breath you step out of reaction and into awareness. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts we make the world." So what is the world you are making? Every thought is a seed, every intention a direction, and every decision, no matter how small, is a reflection of your deepest view of life. Let us go deeper. Let us not make decisions based on the tides of emotion or the storms of the mind. Let us instead become still lakes, reflecting clearly, responding wisely. In the great silence between stimulus and response, between doubt and clarity, lies your true power. That is where wisdom lives. That is where the Buddha's voice can still be heard, not shouting, but whispering, not commanding, but inviting. He does not tell you what to do. He reminds you who you are. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your success or failure. You are the awareness that witnesses all of this, untouched, unshaken. And from that place, you decide. But how do we reach this place? How do we make decisions not out of habit, but out of liberation? It begins with clarity of thought. A mind untamed is a dangerous advisor. It pulls you toward pleasure, pushes you away from pain, and rarely sees the truth in between. The Buddha taught that our suffering begins not with what happens to us, but with how we think about what happens to us. If you want peace, begin there. Before you act, think. Before you speak, pause. Before you judge. Can you see the world not through the filter of your preferences, but with the clean eyes of wisdom? To see clearly is to live clearly. To live clearly is to choose from compassion, not compulsion. The thoughts you allow become the roads you walk. So choose them like a craftsman chooses the grain of wood, the flow of water, the rhythm of stone. You do not need to have it all figured out. You only need to become still enough to hear what life is trying to tell you. So the first decision is this. Will I choose to wake up? Will I choose to stop being driven by what is loud and start being led by what is true? That is where discipline enters. Discipline not as punishment, but as devotion. To live with intention is to live with love. Not the kind of love that is clinging or controlling, but the love that sees life clearly, accepts it fully, and participates in it joyfully. Every morning is an invitation. Every breath is a teacher. Every obstacle is a path. The Buddha did not ask us to worship him. He asked us to look into ourselves, to understand suffering, to release craving, to awaken. In moments of uncertainty, come back to this. Is this decision rooted in fear or in truth? Does this choice create more peace or more confusion? Will this path expand my awareness or contract it? You do not have to rush. The river does not rush. It flows. You do not have to shout. The tree does not shout. It grows. The light of wisdom does not burn. It simply reveals. So when the world demands answers, give it your stillness. When others act from ego, respond from emptiness. When life pulls you in many directions, sit. Just sit. And remember, no decision is made alone. The echo of your choice will ripple across lifetimes. So choose not from the noise, but from the knowing. That knowing lives in you. It always has. And the more you listen to it, the more you quiet the mind and open the heart, the more you will realize that the Buddha is not a statue in a temple. He is a mirror, reflecting your truest self. So before you make any decision in life, come home to that. Come home to the breath. Come home to the silence. Come home to the wisdom that has been waiting, not to be found but to be remembered. This is the path. This is the way. Now take the next step, not with haste, but with harmony. Not with force, but with flow. Not with doubt, but with Dharma and trust. When you choose with awareness, life responds with grace. Let this be your prayer, not in words but in action. Let this be your offering, not in incense, but in attention. Let this be your temple, not made of stone, but of presence. And when the time comes to decide, may you decide not as someone who is lost, but as someone who is awakened. Awakened not from sleep, but from forgetfulness. To remember who you truly are, to remember what truly matters, and to walk each step forward, not in fear, but in freedom, not in ignorance, but in illumination, not in rush, but in reverence. This is the way of the Buddha. This is the art of decision. And now that you have remembered, do not forget again. The world will try to make you forget. It will call you by many names. It will pull at your identity like the tides tugging at the shore. It will convince you that urgency is wisdom, that loudness is power, that more is always better. But the path of the Buddha is not made of noise. It is carved from silence, from simplicity, from stillness that sees through all illusions. And so, before you make any decision in life, return again to that stillness, because if your mind is clouded with craving, even the most logical decision becomes distorted. But if your mind is clear like a mountain stream, even the most difficult decision becomes a doorway to peace. Ask yourself, am I choosing from awareness, or am I being pulled by attachment? The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from craving. Craving for things to be different, craving for more, craving for control. But the wise do not seek to control life. They seek to understand it. They know that every decision ripens from a seed, and the quality of that seed depends on the soil of your mind. So if your mind is restless, polluted by anger, greed, or delusion, your decisions will grow crooked, no matter how noble they seem. But if your mind is calm, rooted in understanding and compassion, then even the smallest act becomes a sacred gesture. The lotus does not bloom because it fights the mud. It blooms because it rises with patience through it. Your decisions are like that. They are not separate from your suffering. They are your answer to it. So ask yourself, when life places a choice before you, am I moving toward truth or away from it? Toward expansion or contraction? Toward freedom or deeper entanglement? This requires courage, not the courage to fight others, but the courage to sit with yourself. Because the hardest decisions are not the ones that require answers. They are the ones that demand honesty. What are you afraid to admit to yourself? What truth are you avoiding? What pain are you covering with busyness? Before you act, feel it. Before you speak, hold it. Before you decide, understand it. And then, when you are no longer running, when you are no longer reacting, something miraculous happens. Clarity arises. Not the clarity that comes from knowing everything, but the clarity that comes from being present with what. And from that presence, choice becomes liberation. You begin to see that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be embraced. That the goal is not control, but connection. You stop making decisions to escape suffering, and begin choosing paths that deepen your awareness. The Buddha's wisdom was never meant to be locked in books or spoken in temples alone. It is a living flame, passed through presence, ignited in silence. fueled by understanding. And that flame lives in you. But it requires it requires watching the fire of your thoughts, what you feed, what you burn away, what you keep close. The mind is like a wild horse, and if you do not hold the reins, it will carry you into storm. But if you learn to ride it, not with force but with friendship, you will find it can carry you into vast, open lands of peace. So when a decision feels overwhelming, do not try to force the answer. Instead, soften your breath, soften your body, soften your expectation. And in that softening, a space opens, a space where intuition begins to whisper, a space where wisdom speaks, not in fear but in compassion. What would kindness do here? What would truth say here? What would peace choose here? These are not weak questions. They are the questions that awaken you. Because the decisions that shape your life are not just about success or failure. They are about alignment. Are you aligned with the Dharma, the natural law of truth and harmony? Are you aligned with your own heart? Not the heart that craves validation, but the heart that longs for authenticity. So often we choose paths to be liked, to be seen, to be accepted. But the Buddha never asked you to be popular. He asked you to be free, free from illusion, free from the prison of self-centered thinking, free from the cycles of suffering. That kind of freedom is not given. It is chosen, and it is chosen in every moment you meet life with presence. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you listen before speaking, every time you reflect before deciding. This is how you build a life, not with grand gestures, but with quiet, courageous decisions made in the dark, guided by the light within. And that light is always there, even when the path seems unclear, even when fear clouds your mind, even when doubt grips your chest. Even then, the light is there, because you are not lost. You are simply being invited to return. Return to what you've always known but forgotten. Return to the wisdom beneath your conditioning. Return to the voice within you that does not shout but knows. And from that place you will know what to do. Not because someone told you, not because a book gave you the answer, but because truth will rise like the sun through the fog of your confusion. And when it does, let your decision be an offering of awareness, an offering of love, an offering of freedom, not just for yourself, but for the world, because every decision made in wisdom ripples out in ways we may never see. A kind word today may heal a heart a decade from now. A quiet act of restraint may stop a storm before it starts. A decision rooted in peace may echo across generations. So don't underestimate the power of a single conscious choice. Don't wait for life to be perfect to begin living wisely. Begin here, begin now, and let your life become a reflection, not of the noise outside but of the silence within, the silence that sees all, the silence that judges nothing, the silence that waits for you to return not just once, but again and again. Because to live awake is not a destination, it is a practice of choosing love over fear, presence over distraction, wisdom over impulse again and again. And every time you return to that choice, you remember who you are, not a puppet of the world, not a prisoner of desire, but a being of awareness, a field of consciousness, a flame of truth. And when you choose from that place, your life becomes a teaching, not in words, but in being. And that is the highest decision of all, to live your life as the Dharma, to be the teaching, to be the path, to be the light that others can see and say, there is something different in that one. Not because they are perfect, but because they are present. Not because they have no pain, but because they meet their pain with compassion. Not because they are fearless, but because they choose what is true even when they are afraid. That is the way of the Buddha. That is the legacy you carry. So now as you face the decisions before you, do not rush. Do not panic. Do not fall into the noise. Instead, breathe, see, feel, listen, and choose with reverence, with awareness, with love. Because that choice, that one small moment of truth, can change everything. Choose as someone who remembers. When you choose with love, you choose with power. Not the power that dominates, but the power that liberates. The power that is felt in your presence, in your stillness, in the way you do not need to prove anything to anyone. Because the awakened do not seek to be right, they seek to understand. They do not seek to win, they seek to bring peace. And peace is not passive. Peace is the fiercest force in the universe. It disarms hatred. It dissolves pride. It shatters the illusions that keep us bound. But to choose peace in a world that profits from conflict requires clarity, requires commitment, requires a heart trained in stillness. So train your heart, not just your mind, because intelligence without compassion becomes cold, discipline without understanding becomes cruelty, and action without presence becomes violence. But when the heart is awake, it guides the mind, and the mind, once humbled, becomes a tool in the service of something greater. The Buddha did not teach to fill minds, he taught to free heart. He pointed to something beyond ideas, to the reality of this moment. Raw, unfiltered, sacred. Before you make any decision in life, ask, what is the quality of my heart right now? Is it open or closed? Is it clinging or is it free? Because your outer decisions are mirrors of your inner state. And so the true work is not in the outcome. It is in your presence. It is in the way you sit with the unknown, the way you allow life to unfold without demanding it become something else. There is deep intelligence in surrender, not the surrender of giving up, but the surrender of giving in to what is true, of bowing to the mystery, of humbling yourself before the vastness you do not yet understand. That is not weakness. That is wisdom, the wisdom that says, I do not know what tomorrow holds, but I will walk toward it with an open heart. I do not know what this choice will bring, but I will make it from my deepest truth. I do not know how others will see me, but I will not betray my soul to please their shadows. This is what it means to walk the middle way, to not be caught in extremes, to not swing from one illusion to another, but to remain centered, awake, alive. And that is a daily decision. It is not made once. It is made again and again, in the quiet spaces between breaths. The choice to come back to presence, to come back to your body, to come back to the gentle fire burning in your chest that says, you are here, you are aware, and in this awareness, everything is possible. You see, the world will tell you to make decisions quickly, to move fast, to get ahead, to always be doing. But the Dharma teaches you something else. It says move slowly, not because you are lazy, but because you are listening. It says reflect deeply, not because you are indecisive, but because you care. It says wait, not out of fear but out of reverence, because some answers do not come through thinking. They come through being. They come when the noise subsides, and the wisdom that has always been within you can finally speak. And that voice, so soft at first, will begin to guide you, not like a map, but like a compass. It will not tell you where to go, but it will tell you what direction feels true. And as you follow that direction, you will begin to feel more aligned, more at ease, more at home in your own skin. Because when you make decisions from that place, you are not just choosing outcomes, you are choosing who you become. And that is the real decision. Not what should I do, but who am I becoming by doing this? That question is the gate. That question opens the path. And if you are brave enough to answer it honestly, you will begin to see your life not as a series of tasks, but as a sacred unfolding. Every conversation, an opportunity to practice compassion. Every challenge, an invitation to deepen your presence. Every failure, not a punishment, but a pointing finger, directing you back to truth. Nothing is wasted. No moment is too small, because awakening doesn't happen only in temples or caves. It happens in how you wake up in the morning. It happens in how you speak to a stranger. It happens in how you choose to respond when life tests you. And life will test you, not because it is cruel, but because it is your teacher. And every decision it places before you is a mirror. It shows you your attachments. It shows you your fears. It shows you where you still cling to control, but it also shows you your strength, your wisdom, your capacity for love. And that is where real freedom begins. Not in having no responsibilities, but in choosing how you carry them. Not in escaping pain, but in embracing it without resistance. Not in silencing the mind, but in seeing that you are not the mind. You are the sky it moves through. You are the space behind it all. And from that space, you will see clearly. You will feel deeply. You will act wise, and you will make decisions not to escape, not to impress, not to prove, but to honor this one brief and precious life you've been given. So let your next decision come from reverence, not from fear. Let it rise from stillness, not from urgency. Let it be a reflection of the wisdom that lives in your bones, in your breath, in your being. You do not need to have all the answers. You only need to be present with the questions, to sit with them gently, to walk with them patiently, and eventually they will bloom, not like explosions, but like flowers, quietly, softly, perfectly. And when they do, you'll know this is the way, this is the path, and I am not walking it alone, because every being who has ever chosen truth walks beside you. Every soul who has sat with their pain rather than run from it breathes with you. Every teacher, every sage, every enlightened heart, they are not behind you or above you. They are within you. They are your potential. They are your reminder. And they are whispering even now, remember who you are. Remember what you know. And when the moment comes to choose, remember, every breath you take is a moment borrowed from eternity. Every decision you make is a thread woven into the fabric of your karma. So choose with the weight of this truth in your hands, not as a burden, but as a blessing. You are not powerless. You never were. You are the one who decides what seeds are planted in your field of life. And whether you water them with awareness or forgetfulness is the difference between a life lived awake and one lived asleep. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fearless. You only need to be honest. And honesty begins here, with presence. Not the kind of presence that needs to be seen or praised, but the kind that listens, the kind that kneels before each moment as if it were holy, because it is. This moment is not preparation for life. It is life, and how you meet it is the loudest prayer you will ever offer. So let your choices be offerings. Let your actions become incense, rising not to the heavens, but inward, toward the temple of your own heart. No one can walk your path for you. No one can speak your truth. No one can make your choices. The Buddha could only point. The Dharma can only guide. The Sangha can only support. But the step must be yours. And when you do step forward, let it be with humility, because the awakened do not boast. They bow. They bow before suffering because they see it not as failure, but as teacher. They bow before joy because they know it too is impermanent. They bow before the unknown because mystery is the birthplace of wisdom. So let humility guide you. Let it soften your judgment. Let it open your hands. Let it dissolve your need to always be right. to always be certain, because sometimes the wisest decision is not to act, but to wait. Sometimes the greatest strength is in restraint. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to say, I don't know, but I'm here. I'm listening. And in that listening, truth arrives. Not as a command, but as a companion. Not as a rigid plan, but as a subtle nudge. That nudge might lead you down a path you didn't expect. It might ask you to let go of something you thought you couldn't live without. It might ask you to risk, to lose, to grieve, to begin again. But always, always it will ask you to grow into the fullness of who you are, to grow beyond fear, to grow through love. And when you grow like this, not only do your decisions change, your very presence begins to heal the world around you. Not because you try to change others, but because your peace becomes contagious. Because your clarity becomes a light in the dark. Because your life becomes a reminder that it is possible to live awake. That it is possible to live without regret. That it is possible to live in harmony with the truth. This is your task. This is your offering. Not to be perfect, but to be real. Not to know it all, but to meet each moment with eyes that are soft and a heart that is open. Not to never fall, but to always rise, again and again, with gentleness. There is a story from the old teachings. A student asked the Buddha, Master, what is the difference between you and me? We both breathe. We both walk. We both eat. The Buddha replied, Yes, but when I walk, I know I am walking. When I eat, I know I am eating. When I breathe, I know I am breathing. That knowing is everything. And so, dear soul, know when you are choosing from fear, and bow to it, then rise with courage. Know when you are choosing from ego, and bow to it, then rise with compassion. Know when you are choosing from confusion, and bow to it, then sit in silence, until clarity dawns. Because the mind that rushes will always miss the truth, but the heart that listens, it never forgets. Let life slow you down. Let life strip away what is false. Let life return you to what is real, and from that place, make your choices, not to escape life, but to embody it, not to fix the world, but to become so present that the world begins to heal around you. Because peace is not something you seek, it is something you become. And once you become it, your decisions become extensions of it. Your presence becomes proof of it. Your life becomes a living Dharma. And the world does not need more noise. It does not need more speed. It does not need more striving. It needs presence. It needs people who have remembered that the highest wisdom is not in knowing more, but in needing less. That the greatest power is not in control, but in surrender. That the deepest love is not in clinging, but in letting go. So now, as you face the crossroads before you, do not look outside for your answers. Close your eyes. Feel your breath. Feel your heart beating. Quiet, steady, true. That is the sound of life. That is the sound of now. And in this now, you are free. Free to choose from presence. Free to choose from clarity. Free to let go of the old stories and write a new one with each breath. So let this be the story you live. The story of someone who woke up. The story of someone who sat with their pain until it became a prayer. The story of someone who chose peace over praise, truth over trend, compassion over comfort. The story of someone who walked not in the footsteps of others, but in the direction of their deepest knowing. And when you reach the end of your days, and you look back at the path you have walked, let it be a path of courage. Let it be a path of honesty. Let it be a path of reverence for the sacredness of each decision. Because in the end, Your life will not be measured by how much you did, but by how deeply you lived. Not by the noise you made, but by the silence you honored. Not by the power you gained, but by the peace you gave. So pause, breathe, and now, when you choose as someone who is no longer lost. Choose as someone who has remembered the way home. Choose as someone who knows. This is not just another decision. This is the next step on the path of awakening. And every step taken in presence is a step taken in freedom. So walk on, not with haste, not with fear, but with the steady, humble grace of one who remembers. Before any decision in life, be still, be awake, be true.